A special thanks to my Patreon supporters. Hikers, campers, woodsmen and the like, what are your scariest experiences in the woods? This will probably get buried, but 2 years ago, myself and 2 other people were camping in Yellow Bottom, which is in the Cascades of Oregon. About 3 a.m., I woke up hearing what sounded like a bunch of people having a campfire party. Nothing huge, not even scary, just talking, laughing, stuff like that. I was kind of pissed since we'd specifically come up to get away from the college kids and such, and now somebody had set up camp what sounded like less than 100 yards away. But I couldn't see fire or light through the tent walls, and since that was my big concern, fire in the woods, I just kind of ground my teeth about it, and went back to sleep. About an hour later, I wake up again, this time somebody's let a little kid start crying, and it's really annoying. Like, not wailing but just sniffles, that long-term crying that kids do. I listen for about 5 minutes and since I'm not a monster, I've kind of got this prickly feeling that maybe there's trouble. You know, little kid crying all alone, where the hell are its parents, etc. I started to get up and my friend, who I though was sleeping, grabs my arm, just about giving me a heart attack, and says don't go out there, just wait. He knows the woods better than me, and he sounded actually scared, so I sit and wait, and yeah, a few minutes later, the crying stops and the party starts back up. But the weird this is, I can't really pinpoint now, what direction the party is coming from, because I was trying to tell if maybe it was a group, who had found the kid and now they were all talking together, but I couldn't tell what direction it was from. The party went on for about another hour, just until dawn, then all of a sudden, nothing. Like, cut off in the middle of a laugh, silence. I was completely freaked out by then, and I think I might have made a noise, when it just stopped like that. My friend, who hadn't even sat up the entire time, just said stick Indians, and then rolled over and fell back asleep. I got up when the sun was finally, completely up, and made coffee and kind of looked around, but I'm not brave like that and didn't go far. But there was nothing, no campfire, not tents I could see through the trees, nothing. We packed up that day, and I asked him what a stick Indian was, and he wouldn't tell me, had to come back and Google it, and even now I'm not sure if what's online is true or made up or what, but if you look it up, apparently it's some kind of Yaquina forest spirit, that lures people out by making noises, like crying babies or people having a party and then, I don't know, eats them or something. So that's my creepy thing in the woods. I don't have any proof, but people who know the Pacific Northwest, it was way up Yellow Bottom, past the official camps, on the left-hand fork of the main road, down that logging road and right by the river. The campsite with the huge fallen over dead trees. That one. Me, I've never been back up there. No sir. Went turkey hunting with my dad, in the Shawnee National Forest, several years ago. I was about 10. Took one afternoon to hike and scout hunting spots. Along the trail, we saw a few blood splatters and drips, but not a big deal, it's nature. About a quarter mile up the trail however, we come up to 3 dogs, hanging from a tree, gutted, bled out, and skinned. Now that was pretty weird and scary. We kept going a bit further, as there was a bluff not too far up the way, that was pretty cool to look at. Come to the bluff, find weird symbols burned into the ground, and on the sides of the rock, wall candle wax absolutely everywhere and more blood all over the ground. By that time my dad, whom I've never seen scared in my life, looked at me and said, "Let's go," and we took off at a pretty quick pace, back to the camp. The worst part is that we didn't leave the campsite, so that night I laid awake in the camper, freaking out at every sound I heard. Still get goosebumps thinking about that event, to this day. This picture was taken a couple of years ago by my buddy. If you look to the right, you can see 2 little white eye-like dots. The thing is, that we hiked in 3 miles, in W Valley, so there's no way they were man-made lights. We didn't notice the dots, until the next morning, and as soon as we did we were quick to pack up and leave. Edit. Forgot to mention that when we checked in the morning, there were no tree or limb where the eyes were, so it couldn't have been a smaller animal, perched on something. It was probably standing up. I post this story every time this question comes up. I enjoy reliving it as I comment. When I was about 13, my parents and I took a trip to Yellowstone National Park. While hiking a trail, we heard a huge crash and a loud scream. "Watch out," were the words yelled out from someone, not in sight on the trail ahead. Hundreds of buffalo appeared, crashing through the trees coming towards us. Executing our natural flight response to this dismal turn of events, we ran as fast as we could, through the woods. I tripped at one point, and will remember screaming out to my mother, who was already there to help me out. My father yelled to us to follow him, as he started running up the hill, on the other side of the path. 5 seconds later, we saw the herd of buffalo passing us. Turns out, if you are ever being chased by a herd of buffalo, you should run uphill, because the herd will naturally go downhill. We went to a diner right after that for lunch, and I ordered a buffalo burger. Gave me a sense of victory. My buddies and I were camping in the woods in Yosemite, CA. We were the only ones in the area, and we knew this because of the camping registry. We were quite literally the only ones, in a 20-mile radius. Anyways, everything was great and normal, and our campsite was on the side of a lake. At night, we all shared an 8-man tent. It was cozy with 8 guys in a tent, but not horrible. Anyways, at about 3 a.m. the first night, we were all suddenly awoken by one member of our group, standing up in the tent and frantically opening the tent door. He poked his head out, and began super frantically and nervously saying, "There's someone in our camp." He kept repeating it, and sounded absolutely terrified. Needless to say, we were fucking horrified that someone might be in our camp, because we knew that we were supposed to be alone. Everyone who had just been woken up, was looking at each other with mortified looks on our faces. After about 15 seconds of saying that someone was in our camp, he laid back down like nothing had happened, and slept. The mother effer was sleepwalking, and there was no one in the camp. It was hard to fall back asleep. I was hiking the Appalachian Trail northbound, in early August a few years ago, and I was a day out of Davenport Gap heading to Hot Springs, North Carolina. I don't remember the exact shelter I was at, but I know it was north of Max Patch. That time of year, there aren't many people on the trail, and other than a couple cars at Max Patch, I hadn't seen or spoken to another person in a full day. I decided to end my hike for the day at about 7 p.m. so I could eat dinner and prepare for bed before dark. I was also filming a little diary of my hike as a gift for my sister. I ate, filmed, reloaded on my water, and hit the hay right as it got dark and the crickets came out. At about 2:30 a.m., I was startled awake, but not by a noise, rather the absolute silence around me. I didn't hear the toads, crickets, owls that you'd expect to hear, and that I had heard when I had gone to sleep just 6 hours earlier. I looked around, but saw nothing. Everything was perfectly still. I made the decision that I had to get the F out of there. I packed all my gear in about 5 minutes, threw on my headlamp, grabbed my bear bag and noped my way up the trail. I'm pretty sure I averaged 4 miles per hour in the pitch black, until sunrise. Because of such an early departure, I finished my planned 18 miles into Hot Springs by 10 a.m., which was nice. To this day, I have no idea what was there that morning, but I know something was there. I've encountered tons of predators in the woods, from black bears to coyotes, but I've never experienced that calm, like that before. Made me think maybe it was some sort of large cat, or worse, some crazy person. Who knows what would have happened, had I stayed until sunrise. Maybe nothing, but I wasn't sticking around to find out. I was hunting a big field for whitetail, It was public land and I decided not to set up a tree stand, and just sit behind some heavy cover on the ground. I try to get to my spots well before sunup, so I'm not making noise at first light, when many deer start to move. I got to my spot at about 5 a.m., it was absolutely pitch black, and all I had was my headlamp. After I switched off my headlamp, it was quiet for about 30 seconds, when suddenly I heard a howl from my right side. It was clear the howl came from the edge of the field I was in, roughly 200 yards away. It sent shivers down my spine. About 30 seconds passed when I heard a second howl, in the opposite direction, on the other end of the field, probably 200 yards the other way. At this point I'm pretty freaked out, but I figure it's highly unlikely anything would attack me. Not much longer and from directly behind me, somewhere in the thick of the woods, a third howl. I now feel surrounded, and I'm terrified. My truck was about 500 yards away to my left, along the edge of the woods in the field and down a narrow path that cuts right through the woods. I flicked on my headlamp, took the safety off my gun, equipped my hunting knife and got the fuck out as fast as I could. I waited until the sun came up, before I went back and actually hunted. I never saw a deer that entire weekend. I presume whatever was howling drove the deer out, and I don't blame the deer one bit. The entire experience was very scary, and I've done a lot of hunting, camping etc. I've spent a ton of time in the woods both during the day and night, and nothing has ever freaked me out so bad. Edit, I do believe it was wolf, not coyotes. The area doesn't hold a lot of wolves, but it is known to have some. I know the difference between a wolf and coyote howl. I'll just admit I was so freaked out maybe I thought it sounded like wolves and convinced myself of it. I was doing an overnight, in a nearby nature preserve, testing out some new gear. I'd hiked that place many times and knew it well. I chose a spot a little too close to the water, however, and being Michigan in the summer, dusk brought mosquitoes, all of the mosquitoes. I made a small, punky fire that kept them at bay. But once I put it out and turned in, sharks came cruising. I tried to stick it out, but by 00:00, I got the F out of Dodge. It was really a lovely night, though. Clear sky. Full moon. It was nice having the forest to myself. Except I didn't. I was walking a trail below a ridgeline, and I could sense something keeping my pace above, a bit behind, and to the left. I walked, it walked. I stopped, it stopped. The area was too densely wooded to make out anything by moonlight. It made barely a sound as it moved. Just an occasional leaf or twig cracking. I've got pretty exceptional hearing and smell, and there was just a hole where I thought it should have been. If it were a predator big or bold enough to stalk me like that, I had a strong feeling that taking off in a run would have made it give chase. So I walked. For miles this thing was tracking me. I think that was the first time I ever had a cold sweat, just trying to remain calm and not give in to the flight urge. After a couple of hours, I got near the entrance of the park. Close enough that you could make out the ugly yellow of the sodium lights, near the main road. Round about then, I noticed that whatever was there just wasn't anymore. It let me exit the park unmolested, but with a new respect for the things that go bump in the night. This happened after my hunt for some whitetail in northern Michigan. I was leaving the woods and heading for my car for the long ride home. The sun was setting and the air was crisp, the smell of fall in the air. As I got to my car, I heard some rustling in the brush, on the other side of the trail I was parked on. Thinking it was an animal, I looked across and saw a guy standing there. He was slightly swaying from side to side. Not a drunk sway, but more of an impatient, standing in line for a long time type of sway. I said, "Hey man, you lost?" He didn't answer, but he gave the creepiest smirk and tilted his head back slightly, without taking his eyes off of me. Needless to say I was creeped the fuck out. My guns made me feel protected, but as I loaded my pack and my shotgun in the car, I didn't take my eyes off of him, and he kept his locked on mine. I kept my 9mm on me, in case he tried something. I was parked parallel to the trail, so when I got in the car, I could still see him. I drove and checked my mirror. He was in the middle of the trail, just walking in my direction. That was the creepiest day hunting I have ever had.